It was a warm and clear day. The sun's rays, with all their powerful stream, pierced the dense foliage of the garden. The castle amazed everyone with its magnificence. The size of the building was unimaginable, and on the spire of the tower hung a flag with the coat of arms of the family that lived there. The majestic house was surrounded by conifers, and on the lawns, along the garden paths, grew lush rose bushes. Not far from the castle's main entrance was a fountain adorned with a statue of an angel. There was also a frightening sculpture of a lion nearby. A very young and incredibly tender girl was walking along the garden path. She was accompanied by a tall blonde man in glasses and a strict black suit. The heroine understood perfectly well that even if she was very sad, there was no point in crying. There was simply no point in it. The man noticed that his daughter was ready to burst into tears at any moment. The little girl tried to calm herself down by saying that her father was doing a great deed for the benefit of the empire, but the girl couldn't hold back her emotions. The blonde tried to cover her face and hide her tears from the person close to her. Dad sat down next to her. The man promised Eva that he would return home safely, so there was no point in her just crying. The little one was interested in only one thing: how long her father would be away. She was worried that the trip could drag on like last time, for a whole long year. The man explained that no one could give an exact date. The blonde pursed his lips, trying not to cry himself. Recently, there was a riot in the royal palace. The nobles declared that none of them wanted to support and invest in Count Eben anymore. After all, he was only squandering the treasury. The emperor understood this whole problem perfectly well. The monarch listened to the discontent of his subjects and ordered the traitor to be interrogated about the unsuccessful journey and then to be done away with. The father did not want to tell the whole truth to Eva. The man only assured that he was ready to do everything possible to return as soon as possible. The relative took the baby by the hair to straighten her curls. He promised that he would live to see his daughter become the crown princess. The man, like a real father, reminded Eva not to neglect her studies and to be careful in her words and actions. He was sure that the heroine was to become a star that would shine brighter than anyone else in that empire. The girl was inspired by such a speech, and therefore the tears from the little girl's face disappeared. Eva pressed herself against her father and kissed him on the forehead, thus wishing her relative good luck on the trip. The man could stand for hours on his knees in front of the person closest and dearest to him. A carriage came for him. The girl and her nanny accompanied him on his long journey. The servant assured her young mistress that the count was the greatest navigator of the empire, and therefore he would be able to bring back the treasures. But the father could not keep his promise. He died on the ship. 3 years later, Vale Castle and all the lands were taken away by strangers. The imperial family broke off the engagement with the crown prince, and Eva was left with nothing. The nanny was already packing her mistress's things. The servant asked the little lady to take care of her health. After all, only then would the count find peace in heaven. The little girl did not know what to do. After all, from that moment on, neither her father nor her nanny would be around, and in the end, she was left completely alone. The servant came closer. The woman promised that the series of failures would end and a successful, good time would come. All he had to do was be patient. The maid reminded that the mistress was a noble lady, and the most important thing was to maintain her dignity. Eva hugged her nanny. She agreed with her words. The servant asked the little one to remain as sweet and generous as she was. The woman was ready to pray for the poor thing. 2 carriages drove up to the palace. One carriage was supposed to take our heroine, and the other was supposed to take all the servants home. The workers were packing their things and getting ready to leave. Everyone had sad faces because no one knew what to do next in life. The man with the thick mustache was supposed to take Eva to himself. He was angry about this outcome and also ordered everyone to hurry so that he could leave there as quickly as possible. The nanny helped the little one with her things. The maid greeted Baron Bitsy politely. The woman herself was not happy that she had to give her mistress to such an impudent man. The new guardian said that he had not received a salary for several months, and he complained that he would have to support the girl himself. Eva silently listened to the adults' conversation and barely held back her tears. The baron explained that feeding and clothing the child was not a cheap pleasure. The man ordered them to. A man of aristocratic appearance appeared. He asked if he should intervene in the conversation. Mr. Bitsy was very tense and calmed down in an instant. Lawrence turned to the girl. The gray-haired man asked Eva to take care of herself. After all, one day their family would meet again. The little one hugged her protector. She asked him to definitely come back for her when everything was fine. The girl climbed into the gardener's arms to say goodbye too. The lady thanked Matthew for the beautiful moonlit garden. Eva approached the priest. She said that her father would put in a good word for the servants before God. The servant of the Almighty explained that Count Eben was watching over them all from heaven. The Baron had already climbed into the carriage. He ordered the girl to finally go, since he himself was already late. When the man was protected by the door, he began to be impudent again. Our heroine went to the transport, leaving her loved ones behind. The former servants watched the mistress, hoping that everything would work out in the little one's life. Eva had already climbed into the carriage, but she decided to look at everyone one last time. The girl was already crying loudly, realizing that she might be seeing the servants for the last time. The nanny covered her mouth with a handkerchief. The maid also did not hold back her emotions, because over a long time they had become like a real family. The little one jumped back to the ground. She ran back to the servants, because she did not want to leave with that evil man. Eva bumped into the nanny and then hugged her close servant tightly. The woman hugged her mistress. The lady said that she would like to stay with the maid and not leave with Baron Bitsy. The heroine asked her to be with her because the faithful and affectionate servant replaced her own mother. The nanny thought for a moment. The woman understood that she could not leave the child all alone in another unfriendly family. The servant turned to the Baron. She said that if Mr. Bitsy would take them both, she would work as a maid for free. Only when it was completely dark did the carriage finally arrive at its destination. The man and the new residents went to the apartment. At the entrance, they were met by the Baron's wife. His son was also there. The relatives were dressed very brightly, lushly, and very richly. The maid spoke first. She greeted the madame and the young master. Another child came around the corner. Surprisingly, the girl was happy to see Eva. The servant looked at everyone with disdain and distrust. The red-haired girl hugged our heroine tightly. She said that she was glad to see the new residents. Pamela noticed that the poor guy was wearing an old dress. The girl specified that it was great news when Eva stopped being the daughter of an earl. 5 years later, the nanny became seriously ill. The older lady insisted that the woman should have taken those pills. The servant wanted to console the little one. She promised that thanks to Eva's efforts, she would soon recover. The screams of the hostess could be heard in the corridor. Madame was looking for our heroine, and clearly with bad intentions. Mrs. Bitsy entered the room holding the garment. She immediately accused the poor fellow of being the one who had damaged the garment. Eva examined the dress. There was a small hole burned in the outfit. The little one replied that she had not done it. The woman said that the child was a liar. After all, everyone confirmed that it was the blonde who ironed the clothes in the morning. The lady specified that she was supporting an abandoned child, and she even dared to brazenly lie to her face. Eva wanted to explain that she had not deceived anyone, but she was slapped across the face. Her cheek immediately turned red and her eyes filled with tears. Pamela saw the whole quarrel. The girl accused her mother of cruelty. The servant guessed who exactly had burned the dress. The daughter asked if she was really ready to hit even her own family if necessary. Pamela grabbed Eva by the hand and pulled her out into the street. The poor thing didn't even resist, because she had no strength or mood left. The day was ruined once again. Already in the yard, the girl apologized for the fact that her mother behaved so terribly. Our heroine did not hold a grudge, since she was used to such humiliation. Pamela grabbed her friend from behind. She suggested that they go to a place together, and she assured them that there they would have the opportunity to see an interesting person. The girl said that the new owner of the castle had arrived, and also, for some reason, the flag of the Eben family was hanging in the palace. Earl Holland was from a noble family and, naturally, insanely rich. Pamela was dying to see the guy. Two guys, obviously from high society, were relaxing by the riverbank. The place was sparsely populated and far from the city, so they were alone. On the other side, our heroine and her friend hid in the bushes. The girls watched those strangers. Pamela suggested that one of the boys was the Earl of Holland. She also said that the nobles had taken up residence in the castle for the summer holidays. In the morning, the aristocrats rode around the Vale estate on horseback and simply relaxed on the beach. No one knew why no one had visited the palace for 5 years, but everything changed that day. The friend said that the brunette was most likely Earl Holland. The guy was enjoying the silence and watching the flow of water. Pamela hoped that there might be a ball or a dinner party, since the Count himself had arrived in their small town. The girl was beaming with happiness in anticipation of some event. Eva stood up and straightened her dress. She suggested that they return to the house, since Madame had thought up a lot of other things for her to do. The friend grabbed our heroine by her clothes, thus stopping her. The girl wanted to watch Earl a little longer. The blonde was worried that they could be discovered, and she also didn't understand why Pamela needed to follow the Count. The girl confidently declared that she was going to seduce the aristocrat. Eva was alarmed by her friend's enthusiasm. Pamela proudly explained that she had decided to win Earl's heart and marry the guy because she wanted to get out of horrible Croxfield and finally visit the capital. If the girl had managed to carry out her plan, she would have become the full-fledged mistress of Vale Castle. It was just not clear how to attract the attention of the guys. Pamela thought that she could do it in such a way as not to arouse unnecessary suspicion. The aristocrats took off their clothes, probably because of the heat. There was a loud splash of water. Earl and his friend plunged into the river to relieve muscle tension and just cool off. The Count washed his face. His t-shirt also got wet, and huge scars on his body became visible. Eva noticed those wounds. She wondered how an aristocrat could have received those beatings, since people from high society very rarely went to war. Pamela came up with an idea. The girl decided to throw her friend into the water, thereby attracting attention and making a lot of noise. Our heroine immediately refused this offer. After all, she didn't know how to swim at all. Pamela assured that the girl would definitely be saved. Eva wanted to ask why her friend didn't jump into the river herself, but she didn't have time. The ill-wisher, with a deft push, pushed our heroine into the warm water. Pamela explained that she could not jump herself because her beautiful and pretty dress might be ruined if it got wet. Eva tried to stay afloat, but her strength was quickly running out, and she begged her friend to help. Pamela on dry land began to scream and look for someone who could save the poor fellow. The girl was walking back towards home. Our heroine had already dived completely under the water. She recalled the words of the mistress about the duties of cleaning the house and also about Eva losing her status as a countess. The girl finally realized that it was Pamela who damaged those clothes because she desperately wanted a new dress. Eva decided to die this way. She did not want to endure that pain and humiliation. The lady remembered the nanny who worked for free for more than 5 years for the sake of a loved one. Cecile became a second mother to the baby. The girl decided that after the death of the maid, she would become... It dawned on Eve that it was unacceptable for a lady to leave a servant all alone in a hated family. The girl tried to float to the surface. The heroine prayed that someone would finally decide to save her. Eva had already lost her strength and was already losing consciousness, having resigned herself to her fate. But suddenly, that guy appeared. The brunette grabbed the poor guy by the waist, pressing him to himself. Count Holland had no trouble dragging another body. He began to float to the surface with ease. The guy first threw Eva onto the shore. On dry land, the girl began to crawl out of the water herself. The heroine lay down on the ground. She began to cough up all the water from her lungs and at the same time greedily gulped in fresh air. Earl crawled up to the stranger. The rescuer didn't understand why she had even gotten into the river if she was such a terrible swimmer. The guy, after he calmed down, asked if the lady was okay. He was very short of breath after such a swim. Eva raised herself up on her elbows. The girl thanked her savior, because if it weren't for the Count, everything would have ended completely differently and badly for her. Their faces were very close. Earl's hair was dripping a little, and accordingly, all of it was flowing onto the lady. The guy quickly came to his senses and rose from the lady's tiny body. The heroine watched him in surprise. The Count covered the stranger with his jacket to keep her warm. Mr. Holland thanked God that nothing had happened. The instigator of the incident herself showed up. Pamela ran up to them and asked if everything was okay. The guy was adjusting his clothes. The friend hugged the girl tightly. She said that she was very scared because she almost got hurt because of a simple request. Pamela turned to her savior. The girl explained that Eva had tripped while picking raspberries. The Count asked the poor woman's last name again. She forgot about her friend's presence and introduced herself. She specified that she was the daughter of Baron Beatty. Earl wanted to give his name as well, but his friend interrupted him. Surprisingly, The blonde called his companion by another nickname. The guy asked again if everything was okay with the lady. Eva said there were no problems. The stranger decided to introduce himself, but unexpectedly, he called himself Count Benjamin Holland. The boy thought for a moment about what to call his friend. His companion informed him that the girl's savior was Sir Ruth, a knight. Pamela replied that the man had made a strong impression on her, and she assured that she would never have thought that such a man could be an ordinary soldier of the kingdom. Eva also wanted to talk to her new acquaintances. The girl said that she was Abel Turner Macy, but she spoke so quietly that no one heard. Ruth thought that the lady was in pain and wanted to examine the poor fellow's body. The lady assured him that nothing terrible had happened, and it was worth leaving everything as it was. The guy clarified that he did not want to force the girl to examine her leg, but it was best to examine everything in order to provide her with timely assistance if necessary. The knight took off her shoe and sock and began to carefully feel them. As soon as they touched her feet, Eva declared that it was incredibly painful. Pamela, as well as the Count, were watching all this. It was awkward for both of them to see such an inspection. Our heroine couldn't stand it and started crying. The savior noticed this and didn't understand why she was so emotional. And the girl replied that it was all because of the awkwardness of the situation. Ruda was amused by this explanation. He said that the lady's feet were incredibly beautiful, and there was no need to be so shy. While our heroine was being examined, the sun had already risen completely. The second half of the day had already begun. Ruth was talking to Eva. His friend couldn't take it anymore and came up behind him. Pamela stood calmly and was pleased that the plan was working. The Earl assumed that the lady was better by now and that they should return back to the summer castle. Ruth turned to his friend. With one look, the guy explained that he needed to stay a little longer and spend time with the ladies. The Earl quickly fell silent and turned away, looking at the beauty of the local forest. It seemed as if the knight was more important than the Earl. Pamela suggested that the guys have dinner together. She specified that she would thank her new acquaintances for saving Eva with the meal. The two friends unanimously agreed. After all, a gentleman could not refuse a lady's invitation. Ruth turned to the lady. He offered to take the girls home if she couldn't walk. Our heroine was shy and refused at once, but Pamela agreed to such help. The girl specified that their home was very far from the river, so Eva would not have been able to walk like that for long. The knight replied that Earl was just the man to escort Miss Pamela. The friend meekly agreed. Ruth was clearly in charge, despite his status. The girl approached her companion. She declared that it was a great honor that the Count himself would accompany her home. After a while, Pamela and Earl climbed on horseback. The friend said goodbye to Eva and specified that they would meet at the estate. Having settled down comfortably, they left towards the city. Our heroine was left alone with her new acquaintance. Ruth waited until his friend and Pamela were out of sight and turned to the lady. He asked if the girl knew how to ride. She replied that she knew a little about it. The knight seated his companion on the horse. The guy explained that Eva should sit down just as she felt comfortable. The brunette specified that he would try to ride slowly. The girl was embarrassed. She honestly admitted that she preferred faster horse riding. Ruda was interested in such confidence of the gentle lady. The guy replied that he would take into account the interests of his companion. The knight jumped onto the horse with ease. He took hold of the bridle and thus embraced our heroine. Eva felt that the acquaintance had sat down very close. The guy advised his companion to hold on tightly to the mare. In a moment, they were riding through the forest. The animal was very strong and ran quite fast. The wind was blowing the lady's hair. The horse occasionally jumped when there were holes. The girl slid a little from her place from such jolts. But the knight felt that his companion would soon fall, and he embraced her with his arm, thereby pressing her back. Ruth didn't even think about stopping the mare. The guy said that everything was fine and there was no need to worry. Eva turned away from him and simply looked ahead. The heroine thought that she just needed to relax and finally enjoy such a moment. They rode out into the field. It was easier for the horse to run there than in the forest through the pits, and so the speed was even greater than before. The girl realized that the feeling of freedom was an incredibly pleasant sensation. The lady was happy that the day had started this way. For her, such emotions reminded her of childhood. The bright sun blinded her eyes, but at the same time gave off a pleasant warmth. At such moments, Eve simply wanted to cry. because after such happiness, she would have to return back to the daily routine. Already at home, the lady thanked the knight for the day. He replied that he himself was pleased with such new acquaintances. The girl was going to return his jacket. Eva was about to take off her cape. But Ruth noticed that her companion's corset was damaged, and her breasts were slightly visible. The knight covered the lady back up. The guy clarified that it would have been better to cover herself with the suit, since the dress was still wet. The lady stated that she would return the jacket to its rightful owner as soon as she had tidied herself up and cleaned it. Ruth was already about to ride back to the castle, and the new acquaintance jumped back on his horse. The knight, when he sat down on the animal, said that he would meet the lady that evening at dinner. Afterwards, the boy rushed back to the exit of the city to finally return to his summer castle. Our heroine looked in the direction Ruth had gone. She continued to stand there until the knight was out of sight. Eva returned back to the house. The girl immediately went into the nanny's room. The blonde was overwhelmed with emotions and therefore did everything very abruptly. The mistress asked how the servant was feeling. The maid continued to cough and asked the miss not to be so impulsive. After all, she had to behave like a real lady. Cecilia began asking whether Eva had studied Latin while she was ill. The servant also reminded her about the Frisian language, which the girl should also learn. The lady sat down on the bed. The heroine explained that the nanny did not need to worry about her studies, since there were no problems there. The blonde asked why the patient had gotten up. The servant assured that her health was better, so she decided to walk. Afterwards, the woman asked how the mistress spent her day. She assumed that Mrs. Baroness again made the poor man work all day. Eva said that she had taken a short walk with Pamela. The maid asked where the girls had managed to go. The lady reported that they had accidentally crossed paths with the new owner of Vale Castle that day. Eva said that the owner of the palace was Count Holland. But for some reason, the flag of the Eben family was flying on the building. The servant was surprised that the gentleman had returned, but it also remained a mystery why the Macy's house banner was there. The lady told about the meeting with the Count and his friend, and that the aristocrats helped the girls a little. Eva imagined her savior. The heroine thought about how handsome the knight was. The nanny coughed again, and the girl came back to reality. The blonde said that the guys would come to dinner that evening, since Pamela had invited both of them. The maid asked what the knight's name was. The lady said that he was Ruth. The servant froze at this news. The lady thought that she was upset because the girl did not remember the full name of the savior. Eva clarified that she was confused and therefore did not hear the full name. The servant suddenly declared that His Highness was not to blame, because it was not the emperor who broke off the engagement 8 years ago. Cecile clarified that the girl should not communicate with that knight anymore. The lady did not understand what such a conversation was about. The nanny said that the king had arranged the marriage, but after Count Ebel's death, he became very ill. Her Majesty seized power and immediately broke off the upcoming engagement. The Empress was not the Crown Prince's biological mother, although the monarch was not guilty of everything. The servant repeated that the knight was not worth messing with, because the current royal family was unstable and very dangerous. Eva didn't understand why the boy was in that castle. The servant told her that Holland's family was closely connected to the late Empress Catherine. The nephew of Her Majesty, Countess Lot, was Mr. Holland. The servants asked again what exactly the knight's name was. Cecil said that the name Ruth meant light, and when the crown prince was a baby, the nobleman Ebel Macy gave the child this nickname. Eva suggested that in that case, the knight could be the king's son. The nanny clarified that this could also be untrue. But in any case, the servant asked the girl not to fall in love with Ruth, since there was a high chance that he was the emperor's heir. Evening came. The servants were cleaning the house for the upcoming guests. Our heroine also worked with everyone and washed the floors. Besides this, the girl wiped books, mugs, and other furniture. Her strength was already running out. Eva wiped the sweat from her face. The hard worker knew she needed to finally rest. The girl decided to go up to her room. The blonde still couldn't believe that Sir Ruth could be the real crown prince. His Highness was supposed to be at the border. Eva understood that there would definitely be a celebration on such an occasion, and rumors about the event would spread throughout the empire. The heroine entered her room. The mistress was looking for something there. The woman did not expect that someone could come inside. Eva immediately asked why Madame Bitsy was in the servant's bedroom. She was afraid that Laura might do something wrong again. The lady said that she was looking for a servant because she had not seen the girl all day, so she came to meet in person. Eva said that she worked in full view of everyone. The baronesses simply ran out of excuses and so decided to change the subject. Laura said that the servants should not have been present at the dinner party, as only guests and members of Bitsy's family were supposed to be there. The lady didn't want strangers to disturb the guests, so Eva had to get back to work after greeting the boys. The poor guy had no choice but to meekly agree. Mrs. Bitsy said she did not wish to see the girl's disgusting expression. She asked if the servant considered herself a noble lady. The angry lady did not wait for an answer and left the room. The woman ordered her to return to work at that very moment. Eva immediately reached into the nightstand to check if everything was in place. But she quickly remembered that she didn't have anything valuable anyway. One of the Bitsy family members appeared behind the heroine. The guy asked what the cutie was doing. The servant was even more scared. Eva turned around and tried to cover her body with her hands. She asked Todd not to do anything. During these 5 years of living together, the child, embittered at everyone, became even fatter and was already a teenager. The impudent man clarified that he had just arrived home, and the servant had not even greeted the master. Eva moved closer to the wall. She begged him not to even think about coming closer. The poor guy's hands were shaking. Todd ordered the girl to stop pretending to be modest. The boy noted that the servant was lucky that under the circumstances, the master was lenient. Our heroine took another step back and asked the impudent fellow not to do anything stupid, but he grabbed her hand abruptly. Eva forced him to remove her hands. The master forced the servant to remain still and relax. But Pamela came into the room just in time. She was shocked by what her brother was trying to do. The girl reminded him that Earl Holland was supposed to come for dinner, so Todd should leave the house for that time. Pamela ordered her brother to leave quickly. After all, this was a very important event for the family. The guy said that she was worthless and didn't dare talk to a relative like that. The impudent guy said that when he gets rich, he won't even look at that miserable and shabby house. Pamela said that once she became a countess, she would bring glory and prosperity to their family. Tada only laughed at these words. The servant pressed herself into a corner, listening to the squabble. The teenager specified that if Eva tried to seduce guests or other men, he would tie the maid up, along with Cecil, and throw her into the lake. The sister did not want to listen to the impudent man's words any further. The girl ordered the servant to go into another room so that she could help get ready for dinner. Pamela asked her friend to hurry up, and she left there and went to get ready for the event. Eva sat down on the bed. The poor thing was shaking all over and couldn't calm down. The heroine assured herself that she had to be patient and everything would be fine. A couple of minutes later, the girl came into her friend's room. Pamela forced her to tighten the corset tighter, because that way her waist seemed even slimmer. Younger Betsy told how attractive the Earl was. Earl was indifferent to everyone at first, but at the end of the walk, he said he was looking forward to dinner. Pamela relayed the guy's words that something unusual would happen that evening. She also became interested in what her friend thought about that young man. The servant did not understand who she was talking about. Miss Betsy specified that she was remembering Sir Ruth. The girl thought that our heroine got along well with the knight. Eva was embarrassed at the mention of the savior. She replied that the guy was a very good person. Pamela said she didn't know who to choose. The girl said she wanted to be with both at the same time. The servant did not understand the meaning of such words. Miss Betsy declared that after her marriage with the Earl, Sir Ruth would become her lover. Pamela told her plan, namely, that the girl had to be alone with Earl. After a certain signal, Eva would carefully lead the knight to her friend's room. Our heroine was scared by this idea. After all, it turned out that the girl was going to seduce the guys one by one. The room where the grand dinner was to be held was completely ready. The maids tried to clean everything until it sparkled. The nobles finally arrived at the estate. Their costumes were chic and completely different from each other. The Baron was the first to greet the guests. It was a great honor for Betsy's family to meet such distinguished guests. Earl said he was glad to have such acquaintances. The guy pressed his fist to his heart, showing his well-being and good intentions. The head of the family introduced his relatives, namely, his wife Laura and daughter Pamela. The son, unfortunately, was absent because too many things had accumulated. The hostess of the house approached the guest. She extended her hand for the guy to kiss, as a sign of greeting and respect. Earl did not attach any significance to such a gesture from the Baroness. The Count only stated that he was glad to meet the woman and Pamela. Laura did not expect that her hand would not be kissed. Among all the servants stood our heroine, who, like everyone else, bowed her head before the guests. The Baron invited the boys to go to the table. He specified that the dishes were not exquisite, but everyone tried hard to cook. Sir Ruth reported that there was another person whom the head of the family never introduced. The knight approached the poor fellow. The guy said that the Baron forgot to tell about the lady. Eva did not expect that she could be noticed among the servants. Everyone in Bitsy's family was shocked by these words. They watched as Ruth approached the maid. Our heroine lowered her head. The girl's cheeks turned red and sweat came out from worry. The blonde did not understand why the guest did this. The servants stepped aside so that the knight could approach Eva. The girl remained silent, not knowing what to answer. The Baron pretended that he had simply forgotten to introduce the servants. He ordered the poor fellow to come closer and greet the guests. The girl curtsied and greeted the Count and Sir Ruth. The blonde gave her full name, Eva Eben Turner Makisbert. The knight came closer to the lady. He immediately asked if the servant knew Mr. Makisbert of Vale. Eva replied that she knew the man very well. The girl specified that she was the daughter of Count Eben. The guest sat down unexpectedly. He was surprised that his new acquaintance turned out to be a close relative of the highly respected man. Ruth kissed the lady's hand. The boy declared that it was a great honor for him to meet Miss Makisbert. The maids were shocked by this start to the evening, because now they had something to discuss in the closet during tea. Laura and Pamela were no less surprised. The guy held the Countess's hand. The guest noticed a wound on the familiar woman's skin, as if the poor fellow had been held and tortured. Eva immediately understood where the knight was looking. She removed her hand so that there would be no unnecessary questions. Ruth assumed that most likely some kind of monster lived in the house. The owner of the house heard the guy's words, which made him very tense. Our heroine stood silently. There was silence in the room, and no one knew how to continue the conversation. After all, it was unpleasant for the guests to see that someone was beating the poor guy. The host of the house finally suggested going to the table. The man wanted to finally start eating and try to cheer up his new acquaintances. Everyone went into the living room. The servants had prepared a great many delicious dishes. Mr. Bitsy was telling his idea of turning the Vale Forest into a hunting area. The Baroness wanted to share her idea as well. The plan was to hold a ball, since the center of the local aristocracy had simply disappeared. Pamela explained that the previous Earl did not care much about changes in society. Therefore, the city became quite poor and without any entertainment. Earl clarified that it was his fault. The guy shared that he was planning to revive Vale in the near future. Eva didn't understand at all why she had to sit at the table and listen to unpleasant words about her father. The girl blamed only Sir Ruth for the troubles, since it was because of the prince that the engagement was broken off, and everything did not go according to plan. The Baron clarified that as far as everyone knew, the new Earl had also bought the adjacent territories to the city. The Earl confirmed those guesses. Mr. Bitsy offered his services, namely to transfer the lands of Vale to him for management. After all, the man had previously controlled the provinces of the Makisbert family, and not a single mistake had been made then. The Count was confused by such ideas, but in order not to offend the owner of the house, he specified that he would think about this proposal a little later. The Baron and his wife thanked Mr. Holland with one voice. They thought that their plan had worked completely. Earl replied that it was too early to rejoice, since nothing had been decided. Ruth sat quietly and did not react to those conversations at all. Laura ordered the servants to bring more wine. On her arm hung an amulet that did not belong to a woman at all. Eva quickly recognized her precious thing. The heroine guessed why the mistress was rummaging in the servants' room. The girl reached for the glass of wine, but she was clutching the vessel with anger, and the glass could soon crack. The knight noticed his acquaintance's displeasure, but he didn't say anything because he didn't know the whole situation. Laura thanked the Earl for the boy escorting Pamela home. Earl explained that it was an honor to help the beautiful lady. The woman asked if Mr. Holland had a fiancé. He said that he and his mother had been looking for a suitable candidate. The Baroness glanced at her daughter. She told me that marriages of convenience were popular among aristocrats, but at the same time, Laura believed that a real family had to be based on love. The woman hinted that closeness arose during a chance meeting, as happened that morning with Pamela and the Count. Earl agreed with that statement. He added that if he was lucky enough to run into someone, he was going to hold on to that person with all his might. The Bitsy girls weren't expecting that answer at all, but Laura quickly turned to the knight and asked the same thing. Ruth replied that there was no one, but he also said that he had been engaged once, but the contract was broken. The woman wondered why this had happened. The knight explained that the decision had been made by the parents themselves, something he himself could not influence. Laura clarified that despite everything, it was not worth blaming the family too much. After all, his relatives could have had important reasons for this. The guy suggested that there could have been some secret. Ruth stated that he felt guilty about the situation. Eva heard everything and was surprised by such words. The Baroness assumed that the knight liked the lady very much, but he specified that he had only met the girl once, when they were young. So there could be no talk of sympathy. Laura replied that in that case, Sir Ruth could find another suitable man. She believed that the boy was popular with the ladies. The knight stated that a true gentleman should not look for other women when he already had a planned bride. Ruth explained that despite the fact that he didn't like the lady and didn't even remember that meeting, he still considered the girl his only one. After dinner, the nobles went out to get some fresh air. Laura returned to her room and prepared for tea. Eva went to the lady. The girl immediately asked for her bracelet back. The Baroness shuddered as she did not expect to hear someone behind her. The relative raised her hand to examine the jewel. The owner of the house said that she had taken the item to use for a while. Our heroine explained that taking something without the owner's consent was not a favor, but real theft. Laura ordered the servant to communicate properly. Eva did not react to those words, but continued to force the bracelet back. The woman turned back to the table and wanted to go back to her hair care. She said she couldn't just return the item. The Baroness explained that because the Eben family had gone bankrupt, no one had received their due salary. And Mrs. Bitsy had taken the poor fellow in thanks to her old friendship with the Earl of Missisbert. Laura clarified that the servant should treat the confiscation of the bracelet as if she were simply repaying debts. Eva wasn't going to just give in. She said that if she did, she would have to report the theft of the property. The Baroness was calm. The woman said that the servants could do whatever they wanted, since no one would check them anyway. Our heroine specified that all precious stones are subject to verification. Literally everything was recorded, from the moment where they were produced to how exactly they ended up in the hands of their rightful owners. Eva said that after the investigation, it would be revealed that the owner of the bracelet was her mother. Then the theft of the item would become public knowledge. The woman stood up from her chair. Laura called the servant some nasty words. The mistress raised her hand to hit the poor fellow for his impudence, but the girl easily grabbed the lady's hand. The blonde declared that she was already taller and stronger than her offender. Eva reminded him that despite the bankruptcy of the Eben family, she was still the daughter of Count Missbert, and a woman should know well how serious an act it was to insult an aristocrat. Laura somehow pulled her hand out of the strong grip. The lady even staggered a little, because she did not expect that the pathetic girl could become so strong and brave. The servant said that if she dared to hit her again, all the beatings would be proven in court. She again asked for her bracelet back. The woman immediately took off the jewelry and threw the item on the floor, and then declared that it was just junk. Eva quickly crouched down to pick up the bracelet. The heroine quickly examined it to make sure there was no damage to it. The girl immediately left the room. Laura was scared and, given her age, she had an elevated pulse. The lady slammed the door and stood in the empty and dark corridor. The blonde was shocked that she could do such a thing. Eva sat down on the floor to catch her breath. She assured herself that she had done everything right, because she couldn't allow everyone to have the opportunity to humiliate her all the time. The lady decided to visit the nanny. There was a bowl of cold water by the patient's bed to relieve the fever, as well as several books for entertainment. Eva changed the bandage on the maid's head. The servant assured her that there was no need to worry so much anymore, since she was feeling much better. Cecil was curious if Earl Holland and Sir Ruth had gone back to their palace. The girl clarified that after tea, they were going to say goodbye to everyone. The nanny asked the lady to go to her room already, so that the lady would also have the opportunity to rest and prepare for the next day. Eva ordered the sick woman to go to bed and stop worrying about everything. The girl put out the candle and went into the corridor. The heroine returned to her duties as a maid. The blonde was carrying sweets for tea. Pamela also came into the hallway. She asked where her friend had disappeared to. The servant explained that she had gone to see Cecil. The girl said that the guests were in the yard. The maid Rosie went after them, but she still hasn't returned. Miss Bitsy ordered Eva to go and check everything too. The servant didn't understand what she had to do with it. Pamela reminded her of the plan, according to which her friend had to find a way to call the Count into the room, but at the same time distract Ruth. Eva passed by. The girl said that she was not going to help with such an idea. Since it was her friend's plan, she had to implement everything herself. Pamela did not expect that the servant could refuse. She asked why the blonde had changed her mind so abruptly. The friend clarified that the girl had decided everything herself and no one had agreed with her about anything. The heroine no longer wanted to have anything to do with Bitsy's family. Pamela promised to talk to her father so that Cecil could finally be sent to a good hospital. Eva stopped silently. She pressed her lips together and considered the offer, but the answer was obvious. The nanny's health was more important than any guy. The guests hid behind the doors. The Earl called the knight His Highness. The Earl said that it was worth returning to the castle, since it was too dangerous for them to return at night. The boy suggested that the imperial family was aware that the prince had left the front. Ruth replied that he had a legal leave, so he could just relax as he pleased. The Count said that His Highness had been doing very strange things lately. The knight did not understand what his friend meant. Earl asked why they had flown the Macesbert family flag on the castle. It might attract a lot of unwanted attention. Ruth specified that he felt guilty about what had happened. Eva's hands were dirty like a servant's, although she was of noble birth. The prince wanted to finally fulfill his duties and look after the girl. Rosie heard the whole conversation perfectly well. Eva went outside and looked around the forest. She began to wonder where exactly the guests could have gone. That maid ran out of the bushes. The girl wanted to get home as quickly as possible after hearing this. The servant grabbed Eva by the arms. She was very frightened and tried to explain that Ruth was not just a sir. The heroine tried to calm Rosie down. The blonde asked her to explain everything to her and tell everything the servants had heard. The maid suddenly pulled away and walked away from her friend. She said that it didn't matter anymore and that she just wanted to go back into the house. Having caught her breath, the servant ran to the entrance again. Eva did not understand anything, but she herself became scared. Earl continued to insist that the prince's life was in danger, and that instead of drinking tea, they needed to return to the palace as quickly as possible. There was some rustling in the bushes. The guys immediately stopped talking, and it was interesting who was behind the plant. The Count decided to find out everything first. He ran to the place of the noise, and there was just Eva. Earl immediately asked how much the girl had managed to eavesdrop. The guy's gaze was stern, as if he was ready to eliminate the ill-wisher. The lady wanted to quickly justify herself, but the prince had already approached them. Unlike his friend, he was completely calm. Eva explained that she came to tell the guests that the tea was ready. The girl heard voices and decided to just check, without any evil intentions. The knight pointed out that Earl had been very sensitive that evening. The Earl immediately fell silent and calmed down. Ruth apologized for his friend's anger. They had just had an important conversation, so the guy was a little nervous. The girl replied that she had no grudge. The knight suggested that in that case, they return to the house together for tea. The three of them came out of the forest. The small company walked along the city street and was already approaching Bitsy's building. Eva recalled Pamela's plan. The girl did not understand how Sir Ruth was to be detained. The knight suddenly suggested to the lady to go for a walk together. It was a stunning night and great weather. Earl was more shocked than the girl. He did not understand what exactly the prince wanted to achieve by such actions. Ruth ordered his friend to return to the house. The Count had no choice but to agree. Mr. Holland quickly went to tea. The knight suggested to his companion not to linger too long and finally go for a walk. It was dark outside. The moon had long since risen, and only its light illuminated the surrounding courtyards. Ruth wanted to find out one thing from Eva. The lady did not resist and allowed him to ask what he was interested in. The knight asked how the girl had ended up in Baron Bitsy's house. Miss Eben replied that it had happened by accident. The guy said that if the poor girl needed help, she could turn to her new acquaintance for help at any time. Eva realized that the knight had guessed about the relationship in Bitsy's house. But the heroine did not need anyone's pity. The lady replied that nothing was needed, as everything was fine. Ruth guessed that he had hurt his companion's feelings. The knight apologized for such words. Eva clarified that the guy was a good person. She understood that the brunette simply wanted to help with the problems in the Baron's family. They stopped. Ruth said he was not as kind as the lady thought. The prince explained that he trusted no one. It was not easy for the guy to be considerate towards other people. And the brunette also considered himself cruel. If someone betrayed Ruth or hurt someone close to him, he had no intention of being merciful. The knight said that he was ready to help the lady with any difficulties, but not financial ones. Eva was surprised by such words of support. The guy gave an example that if someone dares to offend a lady, he will easily deal with any offenders. Eva insisted that the knight shouldn't have touched anyone, but the girl told about Todd and specified that the teenager was not bad, but a little rude. The lady reminded him that she would soon be leaving that family, so there was no need to worry about her. Ruth did not try to convince his companion and simply agreed not to interfere. The guy turned towards the forest. The brunette suggested that Miss Eva go for a walk further. The heroine breathed a sigh of relief. The lady was glad that Ruth did not impose unnecessary help. Eva wanted to ask a question. The companion allowed her to ask anything. The girl was curious why the knight had decided to protect her at all. Sir explained that he had simply been in a similar situation. Ruth decided to ask when the lady had last been to Vale. The lady replied that it had been a long time since she had visited the city. The guy was curious whether Miss remembered her home. Eva specified that she sometimes missed the palace. The lady advised Ruth that if she had time, she should visit the moon garden on the western side of the castle. The knight did not understand at all what place his companion was talking about, but he was very interested to find out because he knew practically nothing about the city, as well as the estate itself. Eva vividly recalled and told that there was a small courtyard with a fountain. It was beautiful there during the day too. But in the evening, when the moon rose, the garden became even more beautiful. Ruth thought for a moment. Then he asked his companion to wait on the trail. He had clearly thought of something. The guy started to walk back to the house. The brunette said that he would be back soon. He needed to take one thing. Eva didn't understand what had happened. The heroine was afraid that she might have said something wrong, but she had no choice, and she had to just stand and wait. 10 minutes later, the girl was already nervous. The poor thing thought that Ruth had simply abandoned her companion and that she needed to return on her own. In the distance, the sound of hooves could be heard. It was a knight riding a horse. The animal ran very fast so that the lady would not be alone in the dark forest for long. Ruth stopped the mare right in front of the girl. They were both out of breath, having rushed to get to the lady. The knight specified that the garden could only be enjoyed in the evening. The boy suggested going to that place. Eva's eyes sparkled with happiness. She wondered if it was true that there was a chance to return to that beautiful courtyard. The heroine missed the garden, but if it weren't for her new acquaintance, she would never have dared to approach the place. The girl carefully extended her hand to her companion. Even in her dreams, Eva remembered how she could enjoy the estate every night as a child. But when she woke up, she constantly felt regret about what had happened. Ruth reminded that it was already chilly outside. Therefore, the lady should cuddle up to the rider so as not to catch a cold. The lady did not resist and hugged her companion. The boy kicked the horse hard, signaling that it was time to go. The animal obediently moved forward. The pair raced through the forest on horseback. A strong and rather cold wind had already risen, and Eva was saved only by the knight's strong body. The girl pressed herself completely against her companion. She closed her eyes briefly from fatigue. The heroine's cheeks were burning. The blonde couldn't even imagine that after so many years of torment, she finally had the opportunity to visit her old home. The treasured castle was already visible through the trees ahead. It was completely immersed in darkness, since there was no one inside. The Count was still in Bitsy's house. The Baron's family was preparing for Pamela to finally be alone with Earl. Mom assured that the guest was completely charmed by her daughter. The girl was remembering her plan. Laura wondered why she was so nervous. Mom hoped that Pamela would succeed. The fate of the family depended on that evening. The daughter asked her parents to make sure that Todd did not ruin anything. The girl considered her brother a real disgrace to their family. Mama agreed to these demands, but she wondered why Pamela allowed the maid and Sir Ruth to be alone. After all, an affair could have started between the couple. The girl was sure that this would not happen, since Ava knew her place in society very well. Laura reminded him that the maid was ready to do anything for her own safety, and she could try to get closer to the knight to get out of a difficult situation. Everyone understood that the guy was interested in Eva. The daughter replied that all those actions were simply an expression of pity for the servant. Pamela was the only one who did not understand why she was the one who was entrusted with taking care of the impoverished countess. The girl bit her nails from excitement. Mom clarified that it was not worth trusting the servant too much. Laura saw her daughter's anger and was very worried about it. Pamela told her to get out of the room, because she knew what needed to be done. The girl clutched the hem of her dress. Her parents had never been interested in their daughter's life, but when the opportunity to rise in status arose, they immediately began giving unnecessary advice. There was a similar situation a long time ago. Then her father asked Pamela to treat her friend well. It was the first time for the little one to visit such large castles. That day, she met Miss Eva for the first time. Her task was to make friends with the young lady so that her parents could receive the title of aristocrats. Pamela, naturally, did not resist her father's will. In the luxurious room, there was our still very little heroine. The baron's daughter tried to behave herself. She curtsied and said that she was glad to meet him. Unlike Pamela, Eva was dressed in expensive clothes. The lady had asked her friend to call her by her first name since childhood. The girl was not happy about this meeting, but from that moment on, the children allegedly became good friends. Eva always had a lot of attention from adults. Her father really loved her, and there were always servants and a loving nanny nearby. Pamela always thought she was much more charming. But since our heroine was from a noble family, she had a wonderful childhood. The girl was glad that Eva had sunk to the level of a servant, and now she had nothing to envy. Pamela hoped that this poor lady would remain a beggar and never be happy. The maid came into the room. Rosie said that there was one very important piece of news that could change everything. The maid spoke of Ruth. She said that, most likely, the guest was not a simple sir. The couple walked into the castle grounds. Eva admired the fact that nothing had changed, and everything was just like in her childhood. Ruth walked behind, wondering where he had to go to get to the promised garden. The lady specified that there were still a couple of meters to the place. The girl's face was glowing with happiness as she recalled her childhood spent in the palace. Eva came up to a large fence. She said that they had finally arrived in the garden. The lady decided to open the gate herself to get there first. Sir watched his companion's actions carefully. The guy tried to be careful because the blonde could lead him into a trap. But before his eyes appeared a luxurious garden. In the middle stood a fountain, and on top was a statue of an angel. Moonlight passed through the hands of the messenger of heaven. There was water flowing there, pouring down into a small pool. Ruth told the legend of the white striped stone. It said that those who made a wish there would find their true love. Eva watched the fountain. The girl assured that since the statue emitted its own light, it was believed that it was the radiance of an angel. There were rumors that if you looked into each other's eyes while glowing, the couple would immediately fall in love. Our heroine's grandfather built that garden especially for his wife, and then Eva's parents met there for the first time. They said that the count and his future bride fell in love at first sight, but the lady did not understand this at all. Eva had always been curious about whether it was possible to experience such close feelings for a person you were literally seeing for the first time. The lady pointed to a room with a balcony. The girl clarified that this was where she lived when she was little. Her father allowed her to move there because his daughter really liked the view from there. Ruth listened attentively to her companion. Eva recalled that she sat on the balcony almost every day. But if anyone had found out about it, the little one could have received a serious punishment for it. The knight watched his girlfriend. The guy was interested in listening to those stories about childhood, which was destroyed in an instant. The lady realized that she was not alone. Her companion remarked that the garden was more beautiful in the spring, when the roses were in bloom. She was so happy that she did not even notice how much she had talked. Eva specified that if the knight had the opportunity, it would be better to come to this place when the plants open. Ruth noticed one poor flower. The companion also noticed it. The lady said that it was simply not the right time yet, and the rose didn't look very good. The guy suggested that the plant was lost. Eva didn't understand how a motionless thing could get lost. The knight asked what they should do with the rose. After all, the flower would die if they left everything as it was. Ruth said that if Miss wished, he was ready to make a fence for the plant and move it to a safe place. If the poor thing was protected from pests and weather conditions, there was a chance of survival. Eva realized that her companion was talking about her, not the rose. The girl assumed that the flower might not need care. Ruth reminded him that he was going to leave early the next morning, so they might not see each other again. The guy said that such help was compensation for the lady who lived many years in torment and out of place. Eva decided to make sure of one thing. The answer to the question about the rose depended on it. The lady asked if she could inquire about what was bothering her so much. Milady asked who gave the knight the name Ruth. The girl clasped her hands to herself, as she was very worried that she might hurt her companion's feelings. Sir was silent at first, but then he smiled brightly and replied that this was the man he admired as a child. Ruth specified that the man was the father of the future bride. The father-in-law wanted the guide to be a light that would illuminate the world. Eva guessed that the new acquaintance was the crown prince. The lady remembered the nanny's words about that nickname. Edward was the real name of the ex-fiancé. The girl said that despite the loss of the privileges of the Eben family, such a life did not cause her pain. She hoped that the boy would understand the message. Eva said that she learned to enjoy everyday things and realized how others were simply grateful for the little things. If our heroine had been protected in Vale, the girl would never have known what life could have been like. Because in order to gain something, something had to be lost. The Countess realized that her situation was not bad. The lady suggested simply leaving the flower where it was. After all, the rose had sprouted at that very moment for some unknown reason. It was necessary to simply observe from the side and let it find its own way. Eva clarified that if the plant simply withered, then that was the fate of the Almighty. She came closer to examine the fountain. The girl decided that the role of that flower was simply to appear in the world, and the main task of the heroine was to be in the position that she was in Bitsy's family. If everything happened for a reason, then no one will know defeat. The companion agreed with her arguments. The lady hoped that Sir Root would have the opportunity to feel happiness. Eva stated that despite the fact that the couple had only seen each other a few times, she considered her ex-fiancé to be an honorable man. The lady decided to pray for the prince's well-being. Miss Eben remembered that she had intended to thank the Earl of Holland, for he was a decent fellow since he kept the castle in good repair. The girl said that the moonlight was really beautiful. She began to walk away from her companion and walked along the edge of the fountain. Eva enjoyed literally everything. The smell of fresh and young trees was already in the garden. The water flowed quietly, but still created a splash on the stones below. The wind rose and the petals of some flowers flew around. Accordingly, there was a wonderful aroma of many flowers. The heroine approached the roses. The lady was sure that life would get better for everyone someday. Eva decided that her ex-fiancé was just a guest in her life. But the girl was glad to meet him, even though it could have been their last meeting. The Countess noticed a knight walking towards her on the other side. Ruth froze and simply looked at the blonde. The couple continued walking in a circle. Eva understood that he was just a passerby who could soon leave and not return. The prince had stopped long ago, waiting. The girl walked, thinking about her own things, and practically crashed into her companion. Although Eva managed to stop, the knight hugged her around the waist and pulled her towards him. The lady stopped breathing from the state of shock. Ruth said he finally understood the meaning of that phrase about love at first sight. The guy stroked the lady's shoulder, not letting her go. Ruth asked whether it was better to stand and enjoy the beautiful night view or to succumb to the magic of the angelic light. There was another option. It was just a casual hug. The guy took his companion by the lip with his finger and pulled down to open her mouth. The lady did not resist in any way. The knight decided to follow the second idea. Edward leaned closer to the lady to seal their feelings with a kiss. Eva was not against it at all. The girl rose on her tiptoes. The heroes almost touched, but the prince slowed down a little. The lady, although she closed her eyes, guessed that Ruth for some reason did not dare to start caresses. The blonde did not understand what had happened. The knight suddenly removed his hands from his ex-fiancée. The guy immediately began to back away. Edward was embarrassed and could not look the lady in the eye. He asked her forgiveness for not having dared to kiss her. Eva asked why the companion had stopped. The prince explained that such closeness was like an oath, and the guy was not sure that he could keep his promise, so he did not want to lie someday. Our heroine guessed that Ruth simply did not intend to give false hopes, but she could not say anything because she was afraid of hurting her companion's feelings. The guy apologized again. The lady assured that she had no grudge. On the contrary, it was for the best for the countess, because if the couple had kissed, the lady would have broken her promise to Cecil. The girl, on the contrary, was grateful to her companion that nothing had happened. In Bitsy's house, all the windows were still lit up, and the tea party was still going on, and the prince and Eva were returning back to the estate. The companions had already reached the door to the living room. Edward noted that the walk had not been fast at all. The lady replied that the knight should not worry about such trifles. The girl decided to open the doors first. The blonde understood perfectly well that as soon as the prince entered, it would be their last meeting. Everyone sat in silence. From Earl's displeased face, one could guess that something serious had happened. The Baron, his wife, and the Count all rose from their seats at one moment, as if people of high rank had entered the room. Pamela also approached them. Unexpectedly, everyone in the room bowed and formally greeted Eva and the knight. The servant closed her mouth. She did not understand why the mistress and the rest of the Bitsy family made such a gesture, and it caused a feeling of fear. The Count was very nervous. Earl greeted his friend as a prince. Eva, hearing those words, began to tremble even more. The guy said that there was no point in hiding anything anymore, since Miss Bitsy had told the whole truth. Ruth didn't quite understand what was happening. The knight became curious about what exactly the Baron's family had learned. The Count turned to Eva. The boy asked if it was true that Miss Meisberg had gone to the river to seduce him. Laura also joined this conversation. The Baroness said that she could no longer bear to hide the truth. The husband tried to calm his beloved. The woman pushed her husband away. She wanted to talk to the servant to push all her daughter's sins onto the poor man. Laura accused Eva of dragging the innocent Pamela to the river to seduce Earl Holland. The mistress suggested that as soon as the maid learned that Ruth was a prince, she immediately changed her goal. The servants completely stopped understanding what was happening. She turned to her friend to explain everything. Pamela apologized to the girl and said that she was going to keep everything a secret, but her conscience was constantly tormenting her. The friend ran up and hugged Eva tightly. She plaintively suggested telling everything as it was, and then begging the guests for forgiveness. The girl quietly clarified that Cecil had a high fever, so the servant should think carefully before answering everyone. Pamela let go of her friend. Eva stood silently and did not move due to the state of shock. Miss Bitsy came up to Ruth. She said she was very sorry that everything had happened the way it had. Pamela asked the prince not to be angry with Eva. The girl assured that her friend was not as terrible as she seemed. Our heroine was shaking all over. She couldn't imagine that that family would come up with such a global deception. The Count turned to the poor guy. Earl asked Miss Makeisbert if she knew that Sir Ruth was His Highness. The girl did not respond to the questions. The aristocrat said that since Eva had decided to remain silent, they would question a second witness. He ordered Rosie to come closer. The Count asked why the servant had gone into the forest. The maid explained that she had simply gone to invite guests for tea. The servants said they heard Mr. Earl address the knight as a prince. The guest suggested that Miss Meisberg had also overheard their conversation. Rosie agreed with those arguments. The servant fell to her knees before Eva. She asked her friend for forgiveness and assured that she did not know how everything would turn out. Earl stated that if Pamela had not decided to tell the truth, then everyone would never have known about the true nature of Miss Makeisbert. The heroine understood what her friend was trying to achieve. Now, in the eyes of people, she was a sly liar. The girl couldn't even imagine what to do next. After all, if she took responsibility, she would be humiliated forever. But Eva had no choice. For the sake of sick Cecil, the lady had to do as her friend ordered. The lady decided that at least she would show Ruta that she was not guilty. Only she did not understand how exactly to do this. The Count wanted to demand a confession from the poor fellow, but the prince finally ordered everyone to shut up. Ruth said that Eva shouldn't have answered, because he wasn't interested in it at all. The lady approached the knight. The girl insisted that it was necessary to tell the truth so that this conversation about what happened would be the last. Eva complained that while living in that house, she often got tired of her insignificant position as a servant and the boring village life. The girl admitted that as soon as she learned of the Count's arrival, she decided to seduce the aristocrat. After all, if Earl liked the servant, she would have the opportunity to go to the capital and become a wealthy lady. Therefore, the lady studied the nobleman's route and arrived at the river. Eva asked her friend if she had said everything correctly. Pamela had not expected such questions and hesitantly confirmed those words. The girl had to listen carefully to the poor man's speech, because she was telling the whole plan that the Bitsy family had come up with. Eva said she fell into the water on purpose to attract attention. As planned, Ruth saved the drowning woman, and what happened next was already known to everyone. The prince decided to check whether what Miss Mackesbert had said was true. She confirmed her entire speech without hesitation. The lady said that she had sworn by a recent kiss with the knight. The girl hoped that Edward understood everything and would tell the Count what was the truth of everything that had been said. The Bitsy family was shocked to hear about the closeness of Ruth and their servant. Laura tried to say something, but due to her excitement, she could not form a sentence. Eva turned to the lady. The girl clarified that she had not spoken about the truthfulness of the kiss with the prince. She simply wanted to emphasize that the words about the plan were real. Miss Mackesbert apologized to His Highness. Edward decided to ask the question about the rose one more time. The boy asked if the servants thought that the flower did not need to be protected from the rain and wind. Eva agreed that the plant should be left in place. The lady was glad that Ruth understood, which was enough. The prince turned to the baron. The man and his wife listened attentively to the order of His Highness. Edward said he would pretend that nothing had happened, but no one else was allowed to mention the incident. Mr. Bitsy was ready to fall on his knees to show his loyalty to the prince. Naturally, he did not argue with Ruth's words. Edward said goodbye to Miss Eva. The lady replied that she was glad to meet her former fiancé in such a way. Afterwards, the nobles went to their castle, and Bitsy's family went to their rooms and prepared for bed. The nanny had a high fever and was trying to get some rest. Eva sat by Cecile's bed and sobbed. The girl buried her head in the blanket so that no one could hear her crying. But the servant woke up anyway. She asked why the lady had such sad emotions. Eva told that the crown prince had left. The little one asked the nanny for forgiveness for not keeping her word. The girl remembered the evening, how she and Ruth rode horseback to the palace. She was truly happy at that moment. The nanny understood how sad the lady was. Cecil explained that it was most likely the lady's first love. Eva couldn't calm down and just clung to the servant like a real mother. The woman consoled the poor man for a long time. The next morning, Edward woke up quite early, despite having been out walking for half the night. He remembered the lady's words, namely, how Eva said that he should leave the flower and let her find her own way. Ruth recalled their very first meeting, which had happened 15 years ago, when the prince had come to the castle to see the young lady. The little one said that from that moment, she became the prince's bride. Then everyone already knew that the children would become spouses. Edward didn't really understand the essence of relationships. Eva explained that marriage was when two people became the closest people in the world. No matter what happened, the husband and wife protected and supported each other. The prince disagreed with this interpretation. He believed that the relationship was created by families for their own interests, and both sides had to be careful. Ruth then went into the living room to have a snack. The guy took the little bride as just an uncomprehending girl. Already in the dining room, the servants brought tea. But Eva broke the mug, saying that the prince's brother had spat in it. The guy tried to justify himself and said that the blonde should have been punished for such actions. The lady did not even think of apologizing and continued arguing. Eva suddenly declared that from that moment on, she was going to always defend Edward. For the prince, it was the first time that a person had sided with him unconditionally. In order to protect her future husband, the little one made every effort in her insignificant way to conscientiously fulfill the duties of a bride. After that incident, Ruth began to think often about the lady's words about the closeness of people in relationships. Earl came into the room, which caused the prince to stop thinking about it. He told his friend that it was time to set out. The Earl knew what Edward was thinking. The boy demanded that he forget about Miss Mackesbert, because the girl could take care of herself. Ruth couldn't understand how his friend could say such things when he himself had seen the situation the lady was in. Holland recalled the Emperor's speech about how Eva was not as simple as she seemed at first glance. Earl clarified that the girl was clearly not stupid. especially after she told the truth in a way that left everyone satisfied. Edward said that he had no intention of involving the lady in his nasty and dangerous life. The Count was glad that His Highness understood everything. The servant brought the armor for the prince. The suit was luxurious, high-quality metal, and expensive fabric. But even this could not please Edward. The guy did not understand whether this was just a vacation or an exemplary service. Earl reported that the armor was heavier than that usually worn in riding competitions. Everyone knew that the prince had come from the front, so he had to wear an outfit that would make people feel proud of the Empire's soldiers. Edward had no choice but to change quickly. The guy changed his shirt for a special tight-fitting sweater to reduce sweating due to the heat. The servant also helped to put on the suit. He put the parts of the protection on the legs, carefully securing them all. The prince stood straight so that my servants could do their job calmly. A few minutes later, the guy was already standing in full uniform, so that people could see that this was not a simple knight, but His Highness. They attached a huge cloak to his back. Holland handed over the helmet, which the servants had polished until it shone. The boy was pleased that the prince did not argue and nevertheless dressed according to the regulations. Edward addressed Earl by a completely different name, namely Benjamin. He ordered a man to be sent to the Baron's house so that it would be possible to keep an eye on Eva. The prince noticed his friend's misunderstanding. The guy explained that it was just concern for his ex-fiancée. Eva said she planned to start an independent life where Bitsy's family wouldn't bother the lady. Earl suggested that if they started making fun of the lady, then just explain why they were wrong. But the prince did not agree with such arguments. The guy said that it would have been better to kill the ill-wishers right away. Edward remembered the agreement where he was obliged not to interfere in Eva's life. The lady did not want to accept anyone's help. Ruth believed that it was possible to simply protect the girl from all sorts of rabble. Many years ago, the young lady was sleeping in her chambers. Edward was in the castle, as well as his brother. Eva always slept with her favorite teddy bear. The little one could not even imagine that someone could hate the future princess. Edward's brother walked into the room. The teenager tried to be quiet, but the creak of the door treacherously echoed throughout the room. The second prince immediately climbed onto Eva's bed. The guy covered the baby with a blanket and tried to strangle her. The lady immediately woke up and tried to break free. He decided to kill Miss because the girl saved Edward from tea with saliva. The teenager declared that Eve could never become empress. The second prince decided that the place of king could only be his. The lady did not want to die in such a way. The little one reached for the hater's face and scratched it hard with her claws. The guy grabbed his face. His cheek was completely covered in blood, and there was clearly a scar that could remain for many years. Finally, Edward walked into the room. He immediately grabbed his distraught brother by the neck and pulled him away from his bride. Eva did not dare to get out from under the blanket. The noise of a fight could be heard near the bed, but mostly the scream of the attacker could be heard. The brunette, after he had dealt with his brother, approached the lady. He pulled the blanket off the baby to check if everything was okay with her. Eva sat up abruptly on the bed. The girl quickly looked around and realized that this was another nightmare. The lady hugged herself, feeling the cold. Every time the heroine was upset or just in a bad state, she always had the same dream. Eva realized that nothing had changed. Edward was gone, and she was left in that small, shabby room. Ruth was already in the capital in his palace, and the poor thing remained in Croxfield and simply continued to live her life. The girl was satisfied with the fact that the knight knew the whole truth and did not blame his former bride for deception. Eva couldn't understand why her soul still hurt. Most likely because of her first love, or maybe because of the cold in the room. The floor creaked. The lady noticed Todd in the shadows. He clearly didn't come with good intentions. Eva didn't wait for the offender to come closer to her. The girl tried to get out of bed and run to the exit. But since the gentleman was stronger, he grabbed the poor fellow by the hand and immediately pulled her towards the bed. To prevent her from running away, the guy sat on the servant's body. The guy knew that our heroine had spent half the night with the crown prince. Todd covered Eva's mouth. The gentleman was trying to find out what exactly the couple did when they were alone. He was angry that the maid always avoided close contact, but immediately tried to kiss Ruth. Todd was squeezing the poor guy's fragile neck. Eva was trying to scream and call for help, and her prayers were answered. The nanny took a heavy book and hit the boy quite hard on the head. While the gentleman was holding his head, Eva was able to climb out and run to her savior. The girls wanted to run away from the room, but Todd managed to catch up with Cecil and grab her gray hair. The guy easily pushed the servant against the nightstand. The nanny hit her back against the furniture and could no longer get up. The teenager sat down opposite the woman. He had already raised his hand and was ready to hit Cecil in the face, but Eva hit Todd on the back of the head from behind. The girl was holding a very heavy candle with a sharp rim. The ill-wisher fell to the floor. The lady was frightened and immediately wanted to call someone for help. The nanny stopped the girl and decided to check on Todd first. But as soon as she touched the offender's neck, she immediately announced that the teenager was dead. Eva stood there and couldn't say anything. The poor thing quickly realized that a couple of seconds ago she simply killed a man. Cecil tried to calm her mistress. She snatched the candle and declared that it was she who had taken Todd's life. The nanny explained that Bitsy's family would never forgive Eva, and so the lady would be arrested as a murderer. The girl specified that the guy was the first to. The servant asked how, after the death of the teenager, the lady would try to prove that he was guilty. The heroine could simply be falsely accused of having seduced Todd. Cecil explained that in their country, the laws were always on the side of the nobility and men. The maid suggested that in a few centuries, everything might have changed, but at that moment, no one would listen to a woman. Eva said she wouldn't let the nanny take all the blame. The servant said she was ready to commit suicide right there in that room if that happened. The lady came up with an idea. She offered two options: either run away together or confess to everyone that she had killed Todd. Eva extended her hand. The girl wanted to finally leave there, to leave all that horror behind. The nanny didn't even resist and agreed. They understood that if they stayed, they would die. But if they ran away, they might have at least some chance of survival. Taxis drove along the streets at night. This was the only way our heroes could quickly leave home and get somewhere. Eva and Cecil arrived at the local church. There, the lady told the priest everything. The man was not particularly happy with such guests. The nanny asked the Holy Father for help. The woman wanted to find a man who could take them out of Croxfield. The blonde stated that he had no right to save the murderers, since God's commandments did not allow such actions. The priest suggested that they go to the prosecutor's office. The man could help there and try to protect the ladies. Cecil said that since no one was going to help, she would simply kill herself right there in the church. The Holy Father understood perfectly well that the court would immediately put the murderers in jail. The nanny specified that it was easier for her to throw herself into the river Vale with the lady than to suffer in prison all her life. The woman explained that if Todd had survived, he would have gotten rid of the servant and would have done whatever he wanted with Eva. The priest knew all the commandments very well, but it might not have been the right decision. After all, they were simply defending themselves from a rapist. Perhaps God could have understood everything if the man had not felt sorry for the dead, but had helped the living. Eva asked for forgiveness for having committed such a grave sin in the hope that the priest could somehow help. The man told of a Garlahan trading party that was in Ingraken. The traders were leaving early in the morning, and the ladies had a chance to board a wagon and travel to Montana. The nanny immediately agreed to this proposal. The Holy Father specified that his friends would meet the poor fellows in the capital. 15 years ago, the prince was walking in the garden. Eva, on her little legs, was trying to catch up with the guy. Edward was already irritated by the fact that the little one was constantly following him. The lady explained that she wanted to be close to her future husband. The girl said that the groom was very handsome, especially his brown eyes. Then, our heroine was happy and could calmly dream of a life together with her husband. The prince did not respond to those compliments. He wondered why Eva said such words. Edward, instead of thanking her, simply agreed with the little one. The boy walked on, and the young lady immediately ran after him. Already in the evening, the servant reported that the prince had to come to the palace the next day, so he should go to bed early. The master was interested in what would happen to Eva. The servant said that the girl was unwell and was lying in her room with a high temperature. Most likely, the lady was simply tired over the past couple of days. Edward, although he did not like the bride, decided to visit the poor guy. The guy heard the noise of a fight behind the door. When the prince went inside, he found his brother trying to strangle the lady. Eva tried to fight back and did not stop resisting. Edward grabbed the ill-wisher by his clothes and threw him off the bed. The brunette did not expect that someone could come up with such a crazy idea as killing a little girl. The second prince quickly came to his senses. The boy immediately started fighting with his brother. He said that Edward should not have meddle in something that was none of his business. A fight began between the relatives, but our hero was a little taller and stronger, so the attacker got most of the damage. After Edward calmed his brother down, he immediately ran to Eva to make sure she was safe. The little one climbed onto the groom's neck without thinking. The girl hugged her protector tightly. The baby's crying in the room did not subside. Eva said that from that moment on, everything was fine. The prince stroked the frightened poor thing, trying to calm her down. Edward returned to the servants. He ordered the servant to have someone speak to James so that he would not dare to tell the company what had happened. The prince explained that if the rumors were known throughout the kingdom, the empress would not leave it alone. The boy said that he had known for a long time that the servant had been sent by Her Majesty. He sent the spy out of the room without hesitation. The servant tried to justify himself somehow, but it was useless. The butler obediently agreed with the order. Edward knew that something like this could still happen even if the king were still in power. Anything could have happened to the emperor, and in that case, the spy would have stopped hiding and tried to destroy our hero. The guy was in his room. He was taking off his shirt and getting ready for bed. But someone knocked on the door. There was one of the guards standing outside. The worker said that Eva wanted to meet His Highness. The lady was already in her sleep suit and had obviously come it herself. The girl immediately ran up to Edward to hug the guy. The guard explained that the miss was upset, and that's why she came running to this area of the castle. She said that she decided to sleep with her fiancé. Eva confessed that she had secretly run away from Cecil. The prince knew that all the servants were probably already looking for the baby. The lady asked why Edward was leaving for the capital. She asked that the boy stay in Vale. The hero ignored all the lady's questions. The prince suggested returning to the castle first. After some time, the couple came to the palace. Edward immediately explained that the miss just came to him and wanted to sleep together. The nanny apologized for not keeping an eye on the lady. She was worried that Eva could cause a lot of trouble for the prince. Cecil called the girl to her, but she was stubborn and resisted, so she hugged her fiancé again. Edward stopped the servants. He said that he would sort it out himself and the maids should just leave. Eva pulled the guy to another place. The lady suggested looking at the view from the balcony. Our heroine was pleased that the nanny could not say anything. The couple went out onto the open terrace, where the garden was visible. The girl admired the beauty and expected that Edward would also like such a setting. The prince smiled for the first time that evening. Eva clarified that it was forbidden to approach the fountain at night. Edward suggested that there were ghosts there. The lady laughed and explained that in the light of the souls, a man and a woman could fall in love at once. Eva said that when they were adults, they could go to the angel. The prince immediately agreed with this proposal. That evening, the girl got her way, and our heroes slept together. Edward finally realized that such a marriage was not a punishment, but rather happiness. Eva suddenly became an adult again. She cried and begged her lover not to leave. Ruth was already approaching the girl, and the guy woke up in his bed. The brunette was shocked and covered in cold sweat. Our hero did not understand what such an unusual dream could mean. The merchants lit a fire. Although it was time to get ready for bed, the people decided to first prepare the carts so that they could set off on their journey in the morning. The priest brought Cecil and Eva to one of the workers. The man's name was Jack. He promised to take the ladies to the capital. The merchant was in debt to the Holy Father. The traveler reported that the journey was very long and difficult, so he was worried that people who had never been on the road before might simply not endure it. Eva said she was confident in her abilities. The heroine was not going to return to Bitsy's family and decided to change her life radically. Soon the sun rose. The camp was completely ready for the team to eat. Many people were still sleeping. Our heroes, like mice, crept towards a certain cart. Jack led the ladies behind the trees so that no one would notice their presence. Eva was able to climb into the carriage with ease, but Cecil, due to her age, had trouble getting up, so the man had to help her. The merchant entered last. The traveler looked around to check if there was anyone near the cart. But fortunately, there was no one yet. Jack crawled up to the ladies. The man explained that there were 40 carriages in all, and his was the last one by number. The numbers were written on one of the wheels of the vehicle, so our heroes had to check each time before climbing in. The merchant specified that he always rode last in the column. Because of this, the ladies had a better chance that no one would notice the illegals. The caravan set off immediately after breakfast. Every 2 hours, a halt was planned since the horses needed rest. The dinner lasted an hour. Jack promised that he would try to cook for the girls, but he could not guarantee that they would get a meal. The man said that during the halts, he planned to park the cart away from everyone, but our heroes still shouldn't have gotten out. And most importantly, they couldn't raise the curtain while driving. The traveler explained that a guard immediately followed the cart, so the illegals would be noticed immediately. Ava listened to everything and remembered the instructions. The girl wondered how long it would take them to get to Montana. The merchant replied that it would take a week, but if the caravan had to go through transit, the trip could be longer. The people were already starting to eat, so Jack had to go. The man wished his fellow travelers good luck and then got out of the cart. Our heroes were left alone. The ladies were pressed on both sides by boxes of goods for sale. Because of this, it was quite cramped inside. Ava suggested that it was worth hiding their true identities. Illegals could be arrested immediately if their true identities were discovered. The lady declared that from now on, Cecil was the mother, and the girl became the servant's daughter. The nanny immediately wanted to start arguing and suggest other options. Eva didn't let her say a word. The blonde said that her name was now Lily. Our heroine had considered the maid a close person before. Cecil decided to go along with this version of the personality change. Mom suggested that her daughters cuddle up to each other and finally get some rest after a long time. Closer to lunch, the nanny continued to sleep, and Eva could not relax and constantly thought about what happened in the Bitsy family. The girl hoped that all this could be just a dream. The poor thing did not understand why God sent her such trials. The blonde was worried that she had committed many sins. That was why her life was so painful. Eva couldn't hold back her tears. The heroine wanted someone to explain what exactly the lady had done wrong to get into such trouble. The only thing that became clear to the lady was that if she tried to change and improve her life, there was always a chance of losing literally everything. Jack climbed into the cart. The man quietly woke up Eve so that no one could hear their conversation. The merchant noticed that Cecil was very tired, since she had been fast asleep until now. The traveler held some food in his hands. He said he could only bring a couple of pieces of bread and water. This would clearly not be enough for the ladies, but Eva was happy with even such a trifle. Jack said that dinner was already ending and the caravan was getting ready to leave. The ladies had a chance to go outside at the next stop. The lady wondered where the guard was. The traveler explained that the guards went to other places during the rest period, but the illegals should have been careful. The nanny woke up from the noise. Eva immediately suggested that Mama eat more, since she herself was not hungry. Cecil suggested that they share the food equally. On such a difficult journey, they had to take care of each other because there was a chance that they would both die. Our heroes ate a piece of bread each. Although it couldn't be called a full meal, it was much better than just starving. The caravan moved on. The girls had time to go to bed again, since there was nothing much for them to do in the dark wagon. The horses continued to run. Since it was evening, many were already tired, and the rear carts urged on those riding in front. There was a constant rumble from the potholes. The transport was shaking from side to side. The ladies could not relax. But soon there was another halt. This was the last rest before the night. As Jack promised, our heroes managed to walk a little. But it was not safe to go far, so Eva and the nanny returned to the carriage almost immediately. The lady was worried that the guards had not been seen once all day. The guards were POTUS's famous mercenaries, and it was very suspicious that they were so careless about their work. Cecil said that for the illegals, this was good news. The woman was already preparing for another sleep. Darkness came. The caravan stopped, and all the people were getting ready for bed. The ladies had the opportunity to go for a proper walk. They came to the river and washed themselves. Eva wondered who owned the Garlihan Merchant Guild. Nanny told her that the caravan had once been a small gathering of people, but the heir, Rex, had expanded the business into a huge fortune. The lady thought the owner was ruthless. Cecil clarified that the man was cold-blooded and cruel. To expand the guild to such a size in such a short time, support was needed. Rex was clearly involved in illegal transactions. But all this was just unsubstantiated rumors. The nanny always wanted the lady to marry a noble aristocrat. However, the woman changed her mind completely. The lady understood perfectly well that after such an escape, she could not live in the role of Eva Eben Turner Mackesbert. Cecil wanted the girl to meet a simply good man with whom she would have love despite her status. The servant specified that only someone with a sense of justice would be able to protect the poor man. The nanny said that everything would get better someday. But our heroes had to go back already, because it was very cold outside. Eva asked if Todd could become emperor. Cecil replied that people who did bad things went to hell after they died. The lady assumed that she would never become a queen then either. After all, she had managed to commit many sins. The nanny took the poor man by the hands. The woman declared that wherever the mistress decided to go, she would immediately follow her. Eva hugged her mother tightly. Cecil said that even sins would be shared between them. Our heroes had already returned to the carriages. The ladies walked carefully but quickly. A lady rushed forward to check the carriage number. Eva was helping the nanny get inside. But a man's voice was heard from behind. It was clearly one of the guards. The guards brought the illegals to the leader without any arguments. Eva was surprised that Rex Gurlihan himself was in the caravan. The guy was pleased that even strangers knew his nickname. The owner clarified that it was not surprising, because anyone with good eyesight would immediately recognize the businessman. The lady was not particularly pleased with such impudence. The blonde was afraid to say anything, and therefore stood silently. Rex approached Eva. The guy asked if the illegals really thought they could go unnoticed. He liked to pretend he didn't suspect anything and just watch from the sidelines. Mr. Harlahan began to worry when he learned that the driver of the 40th cart took food with him every time. So the guard around the cart was removed. But no one suspected that there were strangers in the cart. Eva asked for forgiveness. The girl said that she urgently needed to get to Montana. The owner assumed that since the illegals had nothing to hide, they would not hide in the carriage. Rex wondered if the girls were thieves. The guy ordered the guards to search everything inside the transport. Our heroine tried to stop the search. She explained that although she had acted incorrectly, she still would not have dared to touch someone else's goods. The worker quickly found a suitcase that did not belong to the caravan. The guy threw the bag away, not worrying about the integrity of the things inside. The box contained only personal belongings. The entire dress and some underwear had scattered on the ground and were now completely dirty. The nanny was trying to put all the outfits back together in a hurry and with tears. Now our heroes had to at least do some laundry, since they had few spare suits. Eva asked if the owner was happy. She stated that they never intended to be thieves. Rex clarified that hiding in the guild's carts was already illegal. But since the girls hadn't stolen anything, he would simply let the poor guys go. The lady was shocked that they would be abandoned in the middle of the forest like that. The heroine needed to get to Montana at any cost. Eva begged Mr. Garlihan piteously not to throw them out. The girl was afraid to stay in such a wilderness without even knowing approximately where any city might be. Rex was stubborn. The businessman explained that if the ladies were trying to travel illegally in a carriage, the poor people clearly wouldn't have the money to pay for the ride. He returned to the guards and ordered the carriage to be taken closer to the others. The lady offered to work for the guild. Eva said that she could wash, cook, clean. The girl said that she would do whatever the master ordered. Mr. Garlihan was interested in this proposal. He decided to agree to such pleasant conditions. Rex clarified that since he would be spending a lot of time with the employees in the future, it was worth getting to know them first. Eva was grateful that they were taken in. Cecil called herself Margaret and introduced the girl as her daughter, Lily. The noise brought the other coachmen and general laborers. Rex ordered a tent to be set up for the new charges. The ladies went to bed. The guy came to his room and talked to the security guard. The guard said that the one who introduced herself as the mother was called Cecil. He specified that Margaret addressed her daughter as mistress. Rex replied that from the next day, the new employees should be assigned cooking and other things, and most importantly, that Lily should personally bring the chief food and tea. Mr. Harlahan was pleasantly surprised that the poor fellow, as soon as the first proposal was rejected, immediately thought of a new one. He was curious to know more about the girl's life. Morning came. Everyone had long since woken up. It was breakfast time, and it was the first day of work for our heroes. Cecil poured food for the people. Eva watched the soup so that it did not burn. It was a difficult schedule for them, but they had no choice. The girl poured her dish for everyone who wanted it. Although people were surprised by the new employees, no one refused the food. Eva suggested that the nanny go eat herself. The lady still had to complete the main task, take breakfast to the chief. The blonde entered his chambers. The servant announced that she had brought a freshly prepared meal to the master. Rex wished good morning to the servants. The guy asked how the employee slept in her new place. Lily replied that thanks to his kindness, she was finally able to get a good night's sleep. The chieftain apologized for such a night. It was just that the merchants hated it when things were stolen, and one had to be careful, because all the goods were very expensive. Rex, as soon as the soup was on the table, immediately began to eat. The guy admired Lily's cooking skills, but the owner put down his spoon. Mr. Garlihan explained that potato food was the most hateful to him. The servant offered to quickly prepare another dish. Rex refused and specified that it was okay if he skipped one breakfast. The gentleman said that he would put off work until lunch because of hunger. Eva was frightened by such words. Rex ordered the worker to sit down. One of her duties was to wait until the leader finished eating. Lily sat down opposite. The guy assumed that the lady was from a noble but impoverished family. The servant wanted to remain silent, but Mr. Garlihan insistently asked again. Eva answered that she did not understand what they were talking about at all. Rex continued to ask questions. The leader was interested in why the worker did not get married and whether the servant had a lover. Lily denied all the arguments. The girl guessed why the gentleman wanted her to bring breakfast personally. Mr. Garlihan assumed the servant had a boyfriend, but the couple had broken up. Eva continued to claim that she had never been in a relationship. Rex watched Lily's reaction. He stated that Mrs. Eyes twitched when she tried to lie. Our heroine noticed that the gentleman was very observant. The girl assumed that the guild owner grew up watching the expressions on other people's faces. Rex asked how she connected attentiveness and facial emotion. Lily stated that she was similar to Mr. Garlihan. Eva said that her life had been quite difficult, and that's why she had to follow and watch people. The servant described the gentleman as being able to simply look at another person's expression and understand almost everything. Lily stated that Rex was scared by such reasoning, so she was going to leave to do the rest of the work. Mr. Garlihan tried not to show his emotions. The gentleman was amused by such unexpected arguments. Eva specified that she clearly saw how the leader's eyes trembled. The guy was not particularly pleased with how brazenly the servant spoke. Lily wasn't going to answer any more questions about her personal life, since her only job was to sit next to him during meals. The servant collected all the dishes except the mug and went outside. Rex was left alone, and he had the feeling that the worker had won the argument. Mr. Garlihan was not upset by this at all. On the contrary, he wanted to know even more about Lily's true identity. After breakfast, the caravan continued on its way. In one of the wagons, there was constant talk about all sorts of things. Eva was sitting in that carriage. The fellow traveler was telling about the stubbornness of people. The girl did not really listen to him and simply watched the road. The leader asked Lily if she wanted to change herself. The worker had to turn to her companion, but she did not plan to answer his question. Rex suggested that the girl have an affair. After all, the fastest and most effective way to change is to fall in love. Eva immediately refused this offer. Mr. Garlihan assured that he was not a bad person. The guy said that he had many ladies who were beautiful, kind, and those who comforted their beloved at night. Lily felt uneasy about such frank topics for discussion. The blonde was surprised that Rex perceived girls as objects for entertainment. Mr. Garlihan said at how he divided people into levels: high, medium, and low. But despite the distribution, the guy believed that there were no men better than him. And also, those who were useful and unnecessary were distinguished. Rex clarified that there were some exceptional individuals. Eva asked how valuable a person who seemed unusual was. The guy said that everything depended on his feelings. If he felt comfortable with a person, then it was an ideal creature. The leader assured that when Lily agreed to the proposal for intimacy, the girl would have a happy relationship. Eva continued to refuse. He assumed that the lady did not want to be with him only because of her status. The heroine explained that it made no difference whether the guy was an aristocrat or not. The worker clarified that such thinking was not something good. Rex stated that the lady had an unimaginable ability to hurt people. Lily replied that she had not yet fully mastered the use of such skills. The leader began to laugh again. Eva did not have time to follow the change in his mood. Rex said that the caravan had stopped in the Rubelski district in the Duchy of Kensington. The girl had heard about the owner of those lands. Mr. Garlahan was going to meet the man. He offered to go with the worker, but Eva refused immediately. The leader suggested that the girl was wanted and was afraid to meet anyone. Lily hesitantly denied these arguments. Rex brought up the idea of a walk together again. While he was busy with his work, the worker could enjoy the beautiful view. After all, the ducal court was famous for its beauty. Lily said she would think about the offer. The guy assured her that even if the lady was wanted, she still needed to rest and enjoy life. Edward came to visit an old acquaintance who was on the verge of death. That martyr was Sir Dantes. The old man used to lead the Wild Lion Order. He was once one of the most insane and powerful warriors. Dantes could no longer walk and spent all his days in bed. The poor fellow extended his hand and asked the knight to come closer. The old man insisted that Ruth should not succumb to the tricks of Empress Mary. Despite the opinions of others, Edward was still the only legitimate heir to the throne. The former warrior advised strengthening his position in the Senate in order to suppress the Queen's influence. The martyr had a hard time even just talking, so he fell asleep during the conversation. Ruth was grateful to Dantes for all the help he had given them earlier. After some time, Edward returned to the other knights. The boy announced that he had planned to come to Rubel that evening. The leader gave the order to move on. The guild caravan stopped for the night. The people packed up their tents, and a fire burned out in the middle of the camp. Eva was with the nanny. Cecil was ill again. The woman had a high fever, but she still insisted that everything was fine. The lady tried to find medicine. Our heroine quickly realized that all the drugs had simply run out, so the servant tried to hide her illness. Eva had no idea what to do next in this situation. She was angry that Cecil had not reported her deteriorating health earlier. The poor girl had only one option left. The girl took her mother's necklace and decided to go ask the leader for money. Lily quickly came to Rex's tent. She said that there was an emergency and she needed help. There was some kind of rumble inside. The worker was worried about the noise and the fact that the guy was not answering. The girl smelled something. Black smoke was coming out of the tent roof. Something was on fire inside. Eva ran inside. Rex was fast asleep. Many notes and books were already burning on the floor. Most likely, the fire started from a candle. The heroine decided to try to save the main one herself. She grabbed a leather coat from the hanger. Lily covered the main source of the fire with her suit. The flames began to die down rather quickly. The worker sat on the floor and waited for the smoke to clear completely. Rex didn't even move during this entire time. Because the leader had his own feud in his sleep, the guy clenched his teeth and seemed unable to wake up. He remembered his mother, namely, when his relative died in terrible agony. Little Rex was being carried away by a dying man. The boy tried to reach his mother's body with his hand. Mr. Garlahan managed to grab the man. Only the gentleman woke up and held Eva. The guy was all sweaty. The leader didn't understand who he had touched. He quickly looked around the room and saw the worker. Lily didn't dare take her hand away. The couple were quite close to each other, and both were afraid to say anything. Rex sat down on the bed. He ordered the worker to go away, as he wanted to be alone. The guards also smelled smoke. The guard ran into the master's room, not knowing what had happened. Eva did not impose her problems, and decided to obediently leave the tent. The heroine walked away from the camp. The girl understood that the leader was frightened by something else. On the other side of the river, the sound of horses' hooves could be heard. A cloud of dust rose up from behind them, and nothing could be seen. The knights crossed the bridge one after another. Among the men, one stood out in his armor and cloak. Eva noticed that guy. She tried to see the suit because she had a feeling that she knew that warrior. The horses ran very fast. The dust rose even higher. The knight was lost among the rest of the crowd. The girl hoped that the guy wasn't Ruth. After all, the blonde believed that such a meeting should not have happened yet. Rex came up from behind. Lily didn't expect the leader to decide to take a walk after the fire, and immediately asked why he came to the river. Mr. Garlahan was surprisingly calm. The guy said they needed to talk about one thing. Rex explained that he was angry about the smoke. He apologized to the worker for yelling at the rescuer. Eva replied that there was no need to worry, because everything ended well. The leader was curious as to why Lily had come to a stranger's tent at such a late hour. The girl remembered her request and reached into her pocket. Eva pulled out her mother's necklace. Rex had not expected to see such an expensive piece of jewelry on a simple worker. Lily asked him to take the jewel and, in return, take Margaret to the hospital. She asked again if the chain would be enough to cover all the costs of the treatment. Rex was stunned by the request. The guy said that such decoration could cost a lot of money. Mr. Gerlahan ordered Lily one phrase: "Question the assessment." He compared those words to the Lord's Prayer. The guy explained that the worker had to go to all the buyers she could find and sell the bracelet to the one who offered the highest price. Rex said that the poor guy was lucky to have decided to give him the jewel. After all, another person could have simply cheated and then made a huge amount of money. But the leader was not going to take payment, since Lily saved the tent from burning. Eva asked if it was true about the value of the amulet. Mr. Garlahan answered that the girl was very naive and the worker could have been sold into slavery long ago. The lady assured that the companion did not do such a thing. Lily explained that naivety was not a vice. That is, she meant that it was worth trusting people. She repeated that the gentleman was not a bad person. Rex returned the bracelet. The guy liked such arguments. The companion said that Margaret would see a doctor the next day. They stood by the river for a while. Mr. Garlahan did not understand what it was about the night that interested Lily. Eva answered that the starry sky was especially beautiful. At that time, the knights arrived at the Duke's castle. The prince was officially greeted at the entrance, and the boys apologized for being late. The owner of the house was glad to meet Edward after such a long time. The man said that His Highness had managed to grow up and become a real handsome man. The Duke suggested starting the conversation in another room. The missus said she would ask the servants to serve tea. Benjamin clarified that the prince had been riding a horse all day, which was why he felt tired. The servants had already prepared separate rooms for the boys. A beautiful lady was coming down from the second floor. The lady was glad to see His Highness. The guy noted that he hadn't met Olivia for a long time. The knight himself was pleased with the long-awaited meeting. The lady said that she would personally escort Ruth to his chambers, where he could finally rest. The guests came into the room. Benjamin wondered how the prince felt after the long journey. Edward remembered his plans. He ordered his servant to send people to check Baron Beatty's estate so that the spies could make sure that Eva was okay. The guy didn't understand why there was such a rush, but he wasn't going to contradict the gentleman. The next morning, as Rex had promised, the three of them set out for the city. Cecil was to be taken to the hospital, and Eva and the gentleman were to go to the Duke. Lily was surprised by the leader's calm. The girl asked why Mr. Garlahan wanted to visit Cutsather West, to which she received an unclear answer. The worker became curious about who Cutsather Gozani was. Rex did not understand why she needed that information. Eva clarified that she didn't care about that person and only asked questions to keep the conversation going. The leader knew things about the Duke that others had no idea about. Cutsather was proud of his family and was cold-blooded and cruel. Rex clarified that Mr. Gozani was the chairman of the Senate, which made the man one of the most influential politicians in the empire. The Duke was a cynic and a fundamentalist, which made the guild owner laugh. But the guy was going to cooperate with the side that was more important in the kingdom. Lily thought that the gentleman hated Kensington. Rex said that he disliked all nobles because aristocrats smelled bad. Eva didn't quite understand this expression correctly. The girl tried to sniff herself for a long time to find out what exactly the leader didn't like about her scent. Rumors spread among the palace staff about Edward's closeness to Miss Kensington. A maid claimed that the lady could become the crown princess. The servant dreamed of meeting the knight at least once. Ruth stood at the window and watched the bustle of the street. Namely, he saw how more carriages arrived, with some strange flags. Workers were helping new guests with their things. Edward tried to remember if the family had a Delaphon leaf on their coat of arms. He looked closely at one of the carriages, from which the lady was getting out. Rex was helping the girl. The prince found that long golden hair very familiar. Ruth couldn't believe that Eva had arrived in Cutsather. He tried to convince himself that she was a completely different girl. Benjamin appeared from behind. He said that the Duke was already waiting for the prince, and the guests should prepare for negotiations. Edward glanced out the window again. He decided that the hair was just a coincidence. After all, no one would have thought that Eva would decide to go to Montana. The servant said that after the Senate meeting, the Duke went to Melida's salon. That woman, in addition to being a widow, was the mistress of Marquis Stoku, who was the Empress's cousin. The prince suggested that the Duke might have gone over to the Queen's side. The boy adjusted his tie. Benjamin replied that it was unlikely. Although the offer itself was tempting, Mr. Gozani did not dare to agree. Edward was fully dressed. There was no point in continuing the conversation, so he ordered them to go to the meeting already. The boys came to the terrace. The Duke asked if the prince had a good rest in the chambers. Our hero was completely satisfied with that room. The owner of the house said it would be nice if the guests stayed longer in the city. The Earl explained that the vacation had been a bit long, so they could get a reprimand from the Queen. The servant clarified that it was better to return earlier than to spoil relations with the Empress. The Duke said that the boys did not look like people who followed the orders of a monarch. Cathether assumed that His Highness did not care what others thought, since the prince had decided to visit Sir Dante's. The knight replied that the gentleman simply wanted to express his condolences and that there was no need to be so careful. The guest was worried that he might have said something unnecessary. Mr. Gozani claimed that since the boys had come to his castle, it was better to always be on guard. After all, the eyes of palace informers were often in that castle. Earl wondered whose spies he was referring to, since there were few people who would dare to spy on the prince. Edward also chimed in. He suggested that he had decided to arrange the meeting at an inopportune time. The owner of the castle immediately calmed down. The man bowed and said that he had always been waiting for the prince's visit. The Duke reminded them of his offer. He was sure that if Edward agreed to those conditions, it would be one of the strongest relationships. Our hero was surprised at how cunning Mr. Gozani was. Cathether, in case of the prince's refusal, could immediately go over to the Queen's side. Edward suggested rescheduling the meeting for a later date, namely, meeting in Montana. The Duke did not expect such a statement. The prince explained that he was still tired and just wanted to walk in the garden and breathe some fresh air. The boy wanted Miss Kensington to give him a tour of the estate. The Duke had no choice but to call his daughter. Rex drank another cup of tea while waiting to meet with Cutsitter. The servant told him that the master was negotiating with the crown prince. Mr. Garlahan did not expect to meet Edward himself in that city. He remembered his employee. The guy had long understood that Lily was hiding her identity. The girl was elegant, and her manner of gestures were not like a commoner. But the lady's hands were too rough, like those of a common servant, not an aristocrat. She easily coped with the work of a common maid because she had clearly lost her status too long ago. There was only one person in Carlox who met those two conditions. Rex guessed that the worker was Eva Eben Turner Mackisbert. But it was worth remembering that Lily might not be a countess, but if she really was an aristocrat, something terrible could happen if the girl ran into her ex-fiancé. The guild owner decided that it was impossible to allow the couple to meet. As he was about to leave for the street, Mr. Gozani finally arrived. Rex said that since the prince himself had arrived at the estate, he thought it would be worth leaving and rescheduling their meeting for another time. The Duke suggested quickly solving all the problems in the office. This made the guy angry because he was worried about Lily. In the room, Rex gave the contract and a list of goods for review. The leader assured himself that nothing would happen because, according to rumors, Eva and Edward had never met. Mr. Garlahan remembered that the maid was in the yard, so the prince could not meet her. The guy thought that the couple would not recognize each other anyway. Eva walked in the garden. The lady did not regret that she had decided to agree to the walk. After all, the Duke's estate was truly luxurious. On one of the paths, Lily noticed figures of people, a man and a woman. She did not want to meet anyone and thought about where she could hide. The blonde couldn't think of anything better and simply hid behind the nearest tree. Those two were the prince and Miss Kensington. The girl decided to give Edward a personal tour. Eva immediately recognized her former fiancé. She did not understand why Ruth was in that city. The lady was delighted that she had the privilege of walking through Ragnar's garden with the prince. Edward did not respond much to any compliments. The girl asked what cities the knight had managed to visit. After all, Ruth had long since left for the Western Front line. His Highness told how he had come to Vale. The lady remembered the Earl of Mackisbert's castle. Edward clarified that the estate had already been bought by Mr. Holland. The Duchess noted that the Earl family already had 3 palaces. The prince suggested that collecting buildings was a hobby for the Earl. The girl said that Miss Makesbert was rumored to be living in a small house in Vale. Edward told about the meeting with Eva. Therefore, the gossip about the aristocrat's bad life was true. The lady immediately asked why the prince did not help his ex-bride. After all, the poor guy had a difficult life and she could not do without support. The prince explained that he planned to help Eva somehow, but the girl was against any of his proposals. The duchess said that he had wrongly offered his support. It would have been humiliating for any lady to accept help that was given out of pity. The lady specified that no one would like it when sympathy was openly shown, especially to such a noble person as Miss Makesbert. The companion said that if the prince planned to meet Eva again, it would be best to turn to her for advice. The girls understood each other much better. The duchess herself wanted to help the poor fellow. The prince suggested that Olivia finish the conversation about Miss Makesbert. Edward stated that their relationship had ended long ago. The guy asked his companion not to mention Eva in any conversation anymore. Olivia decided to agree with this demand. Our hero had a constant feeling that someone was watching them. The prince decided to trust his instincts and turned around sharply. He approached the tree where Eva was hiding. But the girl had already left there long ago and in time. Edward grabbed his head. The knight did not understand why the image of the lady kept appearing in his head. Eva ran back to the carts. The guy was sure that his ex-bride was his destiny. The poor girl decided that all that help and the sincere kiss in the garden was just a deception. For the prince, the girl was just a person he met by chance. Eva was sure that the time spent together had no meaning for him. She declared that it was necessary to forget Ruth forever. The lady could not hold back her tears. At that time, Rex was arguing with the Duke. The buyer insisted on selling the goods for 2,000 gold coins. The guy understood that there was no point in offering more, and decided to add another 5,000 silver to the amount the Duke had requested. Mr. Ghazzani immediately agreed to the deal. He said he planned to pay by the end of the month. Rex reviewed the contract. The guy reminded him that he only accepted receipts with the debtor's seal. The Duke replied that he had already put a stamp in Montana, and there was no need to show his signature everywhere. The guild owner said that in that case, he would collect the money when the buyer returned to Montana. Accordingly, Mr. Ghazzani would receive the goods only after payment. Rex assured that he trusted the Duke, but wanted everything to go smoothly. The guy specified that he had demanded the seal not only from Cathether, but from other nobles as well. So there was no point in complaining. The Duke gave in and went to the pedestal. He said he hadn't understood the point of stamping everything. Perhaps the man was trying to trick the merchant. Mr. Ghazzani found his seal and signed a mud document. Rex was pleased because from that moment on, the paper was an important document. The Duke asked the guild owner to lend him another 30,000 gold coins. Rex didn't expect Cutsiter to try to take out another loan. The man assured that he would repay all debts. Mr. Garlahan was sure that the Duke was not lying. He was worried that the owner of the castle had some problems. The guy reminded that the buyer had previously borrowed quite a large amount, and the interest payment for the first 2 months was deferred. The Duke became angry that the merchant was trying to insult Cutsiter's dignity. He said that the flow of money was a little delayed. Rex asked for forgiveness. The guy realized that he had hurt the debtor's feelings with his words. Mr. Ghazzani told him not to worry about trifles, but to quickly prepare a new loan. The Duke specified that he would return all the interest later. Rex replied that when they met in Montana, they would sign the contract. The guy reminded him not to forget to take the seal with him. The servants prepared the carriages for departure. It was already evening, and it was necessary to return to the caravan in order to continue the journey. Mr. Garlahan opened the carriage door. There sat a sad Lily. The guy asked why the worker locked herself inside instead of walking around the garden. Eva did not respond to the questions. There were tears in her eyes. The leader guessed that the girl had met the prince. After some time, the carriages went to the caravan. People drove into the forest, where they had to cross the river. Rex decided to start the conversation first, because the girl sat silently. He asked if everything was okay with the worker. Lily stated that she had had a pretty good time, and there were no problems. The girl asked if the leader had managed to take care of all his business. Mr. Garlahan explained that the delay was due to the arrival of the prince. He assumed that Edward wanted to cement his relationship with the Duke. After all, one way for Root to gain power was to subjugate the nobles of the Senate to him. Rex said that the guy could have just come to meet Olivia. Eva was immediately interested in this guess. The leader said that the Duke's daughter was considered the most beautiful lady in the capital. There were rumors that the lady was the first contender for the role of wife for Edward. Lily was not pleased with this news. Rex knew that it would be best for them to quickly change the subject. Mr. Garlahan said that the palace was very dangerous. The worker forgot about Edward and began to listen attentively. Rex asked the worker that if she ever managed to get to the Senate, she should run away from there immediately. After all, that place was dirty and with evil people. A girl like Lily could not stand all that. Eva didn't know how to answer her. There was silence in the carriage again. The heroine looked out the window, thinking about her own. Rex tried to figure out what the worker was thinking about so hard. He assumed that the servant was upset about her situation, or was thinking about the prince and Olivia. The guy asked Lily what she was thinking. The girl replied that she was trying to understand why everyone wanted power in the Senate. Mr. Harlahan did not know how to explain the whole meaning of that struggle for supremacy in the kingdom. And again, silence hung in the carriage. The carts began to stop unexpectedly. The horses slowly slowed down and stopped in the middle of the path. The worker approached the chief's carriage. Rex didn't understand what had happened. The man explained that knights were approaching from behind, and most likely, the prince himself was among them. It was necessary to let the herd go ahead to avoid creating a traffic jam. Mr. Garlahan ordered everyone to get out and wait until the road was clear. The merchant immediately ran to carry out the order. Eva heard everything. The girl was completely shaking with fear, which her fellow traveler saw perfectly well. Rex knelt down in front of the lady. He asked Lily to get off the carriage, because there was simply no other choice. The heroine was silent and ignored all Rex's words. Miss Makesbert did not want to leave the carriage and see Edward. The entire group of knights also stopped on the path. Benjamin did not understand what had happened, and why the unplanned rest had begun. One of the guards explained that there were 2 carriages ahead. He assumed that the traveler wanted the warriors to go first. Earl said that everything needed to be checked. After all, such actions could be a trap set by bandits. The group rode on. All the merchants lined up near the carriages and bowed as a sign of respect to the warriors. The soldier ordered the travelers to introduce themselves. Rex said he was the owner of the Garlahan Merchant Guild. He explained that they had seen the knights heading down that path, and so they decided to let everyone through so as not to cause a traffic jam. Benjamin told the prince that the coat of arms did indeed belong to that union. The boy specified that it was the largest sales business in the empire. The servant suggested that Edward talk to Rex. Ruth recognized the carriage and the flag. He knew that among the merchants there must be a lady who looked like Eve. The prince got off his horse. The boy walked closer to the travelers. Behind him walked 2 soldiers, ready to fight at any moment. Edward introduced himself as a descendant of the Bertfeld royal family. Rex stated that it was a great honor to meet such a man. Root wondered why Mr. Garlahan was in the area. The merchant explained that he had to deliver something to Duke Kenshingen and was returning from a business meeting. Rex noted that he had been aware of the prince's arrival at the estate. The boy insisted that he had decided that he had no right to see such a man, so he left without saying hello. Edward admired Mr. Garlahan for being able to lead the largest guild at such a young age. Ruth said that he would invite the merchant to his castle someday. The prince was surprised that Rex did not thank him for the offer to meet, and was not even particularly happy. The guild owner did not feel any fear of a person higher in status than him. Edward knew he could have improved his relationship with the boy if it weren't for his pretense. The knight asked who the merchant had gone to the Duke with. Rex said he was not alone. Mr. Garlahan said he had taken several things with him. The prince liked this joke. Ruth asked if there was a girl with the traveler. Mr. Harlahan did not lie and stated that his bride was in the carriage, but his beloved was not feeling well and was sleeping. One of the guards called the merchant a liar. He ordered the entire carriage to be searched, and he reached for his sword. The man pointed a gun at Rex. The guy was not afraid of such threats and agreed to check the cart. The merchant asked the boys not to make noise because his bride was pregnant. The traveler lied skillfully, so it was hard to even notice. The knight reported that there was a girl inside. The angry guard ordered him to go inside. Edward stopped this lawlessness. He asked for forgiveness and specified that at the next meeting he would make amends for his guilt for the rudeness shown. Rex bowed and said that he held no grudge against the noble knights. The two groups had no time to talk further. Ruth climbed on his horse. Before going further, the guy wished his new acquaintance, as well as his bride, happiness and well-being in marriage. The whole group of knights rode on. The prince's horse stood out in the crowd. The animal was taller than the others and bright white. Eva carefully looked out the window. The girl was covered with a jacket, in case the knight still went inside to show that the pregnant woman was really asleep. Rex opened the carriage. He announced that the soldiers had already left. Lily wasn't exactly happy about it, but she wasn't upset either. Mr. Garlahan sat down in his seat. The chieftain did not understand why the worker was frightened. The guy assumed that ignorant people would not guess that the lady was the former fiancée of the crown prince. Eva was shocked. Rex explained that he had known about Lily's true identity for a long time and was going to continue pretending, but the aristocrat was too obvious. The lady wanted to know how exactly he found out. The guy told her about rumors that the noble lady and the nanny had run away for unknown reasons. Rex said he had no intention of interfering in Eva's life. The leader would continue to pretend he knew nothing. The girl thanked him for his understanding. The gentleman suggested that she sleep, since he still had plans to take Margaret to the hospital. At the infirmary, the doctor reported that the cold was much more serious. Cecil had obvious symptoms of mild pneumonia, but if the woman was going to rest a lot and follow all the instructions, she would recover quickly. Eva was glad that the illness was not serious. Lily asked her mother to take medication so that she wouldn't get worse. Margaret assured the girl to finally take care of herself. Rex and Eva had to go outside because visiting hours were over. The guy noticed that the workers were good at playing their roles. The lady clarified that although they tried to deceive everyone, the feelings between them were real. She stated that Cecil was like a family member to her. Rex was surprised by how strong the love was between the nanny and the girl. Eva asked what kind of relationship the leader had with his mother. Mr. Garlahan said that the relative had died too young. The guy suggested that if she had lived, she would have felt disgust for her son. For Eva, such statements were surprising, because a mother could not hate her own child. Rex explained that he was not a nice person. The girl assured that the leader was a very amazing man. Mr. Harlahan had achieved great success in the business of trading. Lily said that her mother would certainly be proud of him. Rex was very embarrassed by the compliments. The guy suggested changing the subject and said that the fictitious name of the worker was not correct. The leader explained that the lady was not like the real Lily because they were pliable plants, which was the complete opposite of his companion. At that moment, Eva was too tired. The guy specified that sometimes such a name suited her. Rex said he knew it was a lie the first time he met Lily. The leader asked him to drop the inappropriate nickname. Eva herself was embarrassed. She was surprised, because such behavior was not natural for the gentleman. The girl remembered about the bracelet. The blonde wanted to sell the jewel to Rex at the previously proposed price. The guy clarified that he decided to add another 500 silver coins to the payment. Our heroine was happy. She thanked Mr. Harlahan. The lady was about to think about how best to distribute the money. Rex suddenly stroked his worker's head. The girl did not expect the touching at all. The leader smiled at her brightly and sincerely. The ruthless businessman had finally found his man, to whom he could show his emotions. Eva looked at the guy. She didn't understand where the feeling of warmth in her soul came from. After all, next to her was not the person with whom the heroine initially wanted to build her life.